Some studies say in India it's less than 1%, but still ending up with very low braille literacy rates. So that was a trigger moment.
Telling me that it was this entire concept came into existence from merely doing market research.
And the kind of feedback we got was sort of life-changing for us. We named it Annie after her because in the visually impaired community, the minute you say Annie or Anne Sullivan, they think of a teacher.
When we talk about education and technology, we usually talk about speed, scale, and screens. But rarely do we ask the more uncomfortable question. Who gets left out when innovation moves so fast? Today's conversation is about building technology for hands, not eyes. About dignity, not features. About independence, not assistance. My guest today is Dilip Ramesh, CEO of Thinkerbell Labs, a company that's rethinking how visually impaired children learn to read, write, and understand the world through Braille. You may have seen their work on Shark Tank or featured by global platforms or demonstrated to world leaders. But this conversation isn't about the headlines. It's about the assumptions we've made about intelligence, about what data can teach us when it disagrees with us, about what happens when a child learns independently for the first time without waiting for permission. So, if you've ever wondered what inclusive technology really looks like beyond the pitch decks, or how the innovation feels when it's designed from the margins inward, this episode is for you. Welcome to BS Talks, where BS stands for brand shark, not bullshit. Welcome to this show, sir. So, before we get started, people have always spoken about the world of Braille, but there are many unanswered questions. Let's talk about you building a company that treats accessibility as the foundation. So tell me more about yourself and the audience about what you do and where you come from.
Thank you so much for having me here. The pleasure is all mine. We are Thinkerbell Labs. We are an assistive technology startup, and we are in our 10th year now. So we've been doing it for quite some time. So my co-founders and I started looking at Braille literacy as the core concept because we, in our market research, identified that across the globe, Braille literacy rates are very, very low.
Okay.
Some studies say in India it's less than 1%. I mean, there aren't any direct studies per se, but if you gather data from various sources, that is what you end up with. And even in the US, it's less than 10%. So we're looking at areas where you have a lot of funding in education, but still ending up with very low Braille literacy rates. So that was a trigger moment, I would say. So which is why we started looking further into what we can do to increase Braille literacy rates. And that sort of got us into the rabbit hole. And what we understood was that there was a need to standardize and make the entire learning process more efficient. And that is what we got into. We come from a tech background, we're engineers ourselves. So tech was obviously a major part of the entire puzzle because I believe true scalability comes with the right application of technology.
Absolutely.
So that's what we got started with, and we learned Braille ourselves in the traditional way. And we sort of, there are, of course, with any traditional way, across any sector, there are good things and there are things that can be improved. And we took the good things as is. So we ended up digitizing the entire pedagogy of Braille learning. And that's how Annie was born, our first product. It's a Braille literacy device.
So speaking of triggers, so you're telling me that it was this entire concept came into existence from merely doing market research, or was there a particular child, a day, or a classroom that incited that feeling for you and your co-founder?
I mean, it's something we've been asked quite a bit in the last 10 years.
Because the product is very human.
Yeah, true.
Tending to the human feel.
Correct. I think for us, we don't really have any personal connect. None of us have a personal connect. But there are a few common factors that have gotten us together and kept us together as well.
Okay.
We fortunately, and I mean, quite grateful to that, we all four of us share a very strong bond even today. Right? And that's also another thing that's been spoken about startups, how co-founders stay together. So yeah, I'm very fortunate and grateful for that.
But touch wood for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one key aspect was we all wanted to work on something that had a very tangible and immediate impact.
Okay.
I mean, I'm the kind of person who believes most businesses or almost all businesses have impact in one way or the other. Right? Even the ones who at the face level uh, come across as a purely economical play do have an impact. They do affect our lives in a positive way at some point.
Absolutely.
So here we looked at something where there was a social angle associated to it. It had something where, as a result of our direct work, we could see a change in people's lives in a very tangible manner.
But here, I would like to ask,
Yeah.
you started thinking, okay, this is going to be a company. Did you start this movement with your team thinking this is going to be a company, or because you thought that someone needs to fix it?
I would say, actually, I mean, if you look at the chronological order of how it came to being, right, it started off as a technical project.
Okay.
So on day one, I would say there wasn't anything associated with it being a company, it being a product even, or it being something that could drive impact globally. Those were probably the reasons we decided to stick with it post our graduation, because we started working on this when we were still in college.
Okay.
So initially it was a technical project, and that was purely out of curiosity, because a lot of the technical core concepts that we were sort of learning through various years in our engineering could be applied to Braille as well. So we looked at how it could be applied to Braille, and we had like a very rudimentary prototype to begin with. And that curiosity, I think, led us from there to going to a blind school to see what children would say, what teachers would say about it. And the kind of feedback we got was sort of life-changing for us, because we had this in a couple of schools we went to. We had these teenagers, who were in maybe about class 7, class 8. And at that point, fortunately, they were already a little proficient with Braille.
Okay.
And they still were playing around with this very rudimentary prototype we had. It just sang the alphabet song and nothing else, right? It just went A, B, C, D. And as it changed the letter in the alphabet, the Braille notation of it changed on the device as well. So we had these large pins moving up and down, causing different combinations. And these teenagers were hooked onto this very rudimentary device. And we found that to be a little odd, right? And that's not something we usually see. But we then started digging further. We spoke to the teachers there. We spoke to the students themselves. And we realized that in their entire learning process, they haven't had anything that they can operate by themselves. They can sort of play around with themselves and have it under their command. So specific.
Human nature to seize independence.
Exactly. Yeah. So that made them stick with it, even though it was very rudimentary. And I think that was if we think back, it's always been like one of those cornerstone moments for us that has stayed with us, right? But yeah, for me personally, I would say the things that came together which made this the most meaningful thing for me after I graduated were, one, it is to do with education. I've always been very keen on working in the field of education. Even while in college, I had the opportunity of being part of our student-run NGO.
Okay.
And I had the opportunity to lead the NGO as well. We had about 120 volunteers, and we worked in the fields of education, livelihood, health, community participation. So we had like an urban slum opposite our campus. So a lot of our work happened there. And so I've done, like grassroots level teaching of class 5 students. We've done like school adoption program, setting up libraries. So always been passionate about education, one. Second, I've been passionate about entrepreneurship as well. Thanks to my alma mater, BITS Pilani, because there's a lot of encouragement for entrepreneurship. And the peer group was also such that everybody was thinking about something or the other, building something of their own. And we had a great course as well called New Venture Creation.
Okay.
So all of us, my co-founders, have been a part of this group at different stages. And we've sort of learned, in a very hands-on manner, how to build companies, what are the different aspects we need to keep in mind, how to go about it. And all of these were from real-life entrepreneurs who came in for lectures.
Okay.
So we've had lectures from Redbus founders, Practo founders, large companies. They took time out to come and give these lectures to us. So I think all of these molded together. So education, entrepreneurship, and technology came together. So it was the right thing for me. And of course, it was with my friends. What better, right? So
absolutely. So according to you, like before Thinkerbell Labs came into existence, where it was a collaboration of all of what you've just mentioned, what was the most dangerous assumption that people have towards visually impaired children's learning?
Right. I actually, even before we look at learning in particular, uh, I mean, my personal view has been that for far too long we've looked at the entire world of people with visual impairments, be it in education or livelihood, uh, perhaps not healthcare to a large extent, but definitely in education and livelihood, has always been looked at through the lens of charity or philanthropy, right?
Correct.
I don't particularly have a concern with that, with just that aspect, but I feel it cannot be restricted to only that. And I feel a lot of innovation has been stalled in this space because of that, right? Like,
Absolutely.
so that is why our intent from day one was to run it as a for-profit entity. And I've always believed that is what drives the maximum innovation, especially when you talk about speed of coming up with new concepts, integrating that with existing systems. And over the last 2 decades, we've seen rapid transformation in a lot of different sectors around us, in India especially. You look at e-commerce, you've seen how it's grown. You look at education technology as well. For the mainstream audience, you've seen how it's grown over the last couple of years. How we learned in school is already outdated now. It's not been a very long time if you look
It
at
got outdated while we were studying.
Absolutely. But it's not happened for this particular space.
Correct.
Right? So I think that
Because the innovation is leaving gaps
exactly.
in the name of charitable action.
Exactly. Because I mean, may not fit for everybody who has obviously, if you're looking into charity, you have like a goodwill mindset, goodwill nature. But I feel somewhere you also have this thing that, oh, I've done something, and you put a tick mark and you move on in life, and that's not enough for innovation.
That's
right?
very true.
So that was, I think, something that we noticed and has stayed with us. Now, in the last 5 years or so, especially post pandemic, we are seeing a lot more innovation happening. A lot more startups are coming up, and it's really nice to see. But when we started, there weren't many. So for a bit, it was a lonely period. But I'm super glad that we started when we did. Now we have, of course, a lot of company around us, and we're seeing a lot more innovation in assistive technology happening as well. So we're definitely seeing a positive change, not just in India but the world over. But yeah, about 10 years ago, I would say that was my biggest pet peeve in this particular sector.
And just like leading up from your observation about how this is like a charity aspect in livelihood and education, why do you think that the society reacts more to blindness than the illiteracy amongst that is caused?
I think it's not just to do with the visual impairment aspect. At some level, one could argue that healthcare and health related aspects take precedence over education. I mean,
You need to be alive, or like you need to be surviving.
Exactly.
To do this, yeah.
So that probably is the reason why people look at the blindness aspect first before looking at the literacy aspect, right?
I mean, but my question here is by that perspective, thinking, okay, if for a visually impaired person, their other senses could be heightened. Education should not be a privilege. It should be accessible to all.
Yeah.
So that gap, like, what is the impact of this notion that the society has, like, when it comes emotionally, like, towards the system and academically? What do you think is the impact?
I think if for in a fast growing economy like ours, like there's always a push in the mainstream to become one of these key professions, like you become an engineer, you become a doctor, become a lawyer. I mean, it's very cliche, I know, to say that, but and I know it's also changing over the last few years now. A lot of new fields have sprung up as well, but I think there's somewhere there is this notion that some of these things cannot be done by people with visual impairments. I would say it's not entirely true, right? Like we've seen success stories and a lot of motivational figures across all sectors who have visual impairments, be it your IAS officers, be it your software developers, your lawyers, you name it, they've done it, right?
Correct.
So it's definitely, it has posed challenges for them to get to those levels as compared to their sighted peers. But I feel that is more to do with the lack of infrastructure rather than their own impediments.
Very,
right?
very.
So yeah, I think that is where it becomes the responsibility of the system builders to ensure the infrastructure exists so that they can bring their best to the table, because they do have a lot to offer to society.
Very true. I completely agree with that. So, in the start of our conversation, you had mentioned the product Annie. Annie is a very interesting name. So, before we get into the details of it, could you tell me the story behind Annie?
So we initially called it Mudra, right? Because Mudra,
Project Mudra.
correct, yeah. So Mudra basically stands for like a sign, right? And Braille is a form of a sign, you could say. So we had this one competition that we were applying to, I forget which one exactly, and they needed a project name and a product name.
Okay.
So we had a project name. It was called Project Mudra, and we were working with a couple of interns. So still when we were in college, we were on campus, and we were brainstorming, with everybody in the team. So then we looked at famous personalities in the blindness space. So then we looked at Helen Keller, of course, one of the prominent names that comes up. So Helen Keller's one of her teachers was called Anne Sullivan.
Okay.
And she was fondly called as Annie. So we named it Annie after her because in the visually impaired community, the minute you say Annie or Anne Sullivan, they think of a teacher.
Okay.
So we wanted that persona to stick with the device. So
that's quite interesting. So it's a self-learning device that helps children learn, right? So what's the most surprising thing that you've seen a student who's using the device do?
So, I mean, of course, a lot of stories. Off the top of my mind, one of the first things that sort of hit us hard was we designed Braille games. First of its kind, I would say, where so we have this game called Letter Race. It's one of the most well-received games we have. So it basically has Braille letters popping up on the Braille display, and if you type them correctly, they disappear. But if they end up filling the entire display, you lose the game.
Hangman type.
Hangman types, yeah. Or a Tetris type, right? So it's like an endless game. So the faster you play and the better you are at reading and typing, the more you can score. So you get 1 point for every right letter. So we took it to a school. We're running some field trials on this. This is the first time we had developed this game and we were trying it out. So we had like a 2-minute instruction that Annie gives out and then the game starts. So it gave out the instruction, and I paused the device and I also gave some instruction on top of it. Then we hit spacebar to start, and then this one kid played the game. I think he was in about class 3 or class 4, and he scored some 8 or 9 points.
Okay.
And then second kid came and he also played the game, and then he scored around 6 or 7 points, a few points lesser. And then I was like, okay, so I was moving on to the next segment of whatever I wanted to test, and this kid is like, no, wait, I want to beat that guy's score. So it immediately became about competition, right? So this is something we've taken for granted, right? The aspect of competitive learning, but it's a huge force in education.
Correct.
You're learning from your peers. It comes in many ways, and one way is always trying to beat your peer at something, that they're learning faster than you are, and we've utilized that everywhere after that. It's become a core concept of our games.
Yeah.
So not in a very in-your-face way, but some level of scoring is always a part of it. And in schools,
it
what
incentivizes
exactly
learning. Absolutely.
What we do is at the end of every game that they play, so we also record their names, right? So it says, hi Dilip. When you turn on the device and you put in your login key, it says welcome Dilip. So we have this thing where it says your class high score is Dilip's score, and it says so and so score.
Okay.
So everybody wants to get their name onto that, right? So I mean, it's one of those things where we built something with a completely different mindset, but it became about the collective learning spirit and the competitive learning spirit at the end of the day.
So there is a very interesting feedback loop that that develops your product. So if you could give Annie a personality, since she at the end of the day is going to be is the teacher of the children, what would the personality of the teacher be?
I would say Annie was designed to be a very calm and patient teacher. And I think to some extent we've succeeded at making her a calm and patient teacher, because one factor that kids absolutely love about the device is how she never scolds, right? We've heard this repeatedly in multiple languages across India and other parts of the globe as well. If you ask them, what do you like about Annie? And they immediately say, it doesn't matter how many times I get things wrong, she never scolds me. So what we also did in that process was, so Annie has encouraging feedback, right? So you go wrong and he says, oh, that's all right, let's try again. why don't you now, do this instead? It gives you some feedback on those lines. So we put in a bunch of different ways of saying it and we randomize it.
Okay.
So it's not always the same mundane, bad or mad. So every time there's a different message that comes up. So, we had this one instance where, so initially a lot of our content was recorded by Sanskriti, my co-founder.
Okay.
And we went to the school and we were trialing the device with the child, which is probably about 5 or 6 years old. So Sanskriti was talking to her and then she was using the device. And after a while, we said, okay, bye. And Sanskriti said bye to her. And this child is like, okay, bye, Annie. So she thought Sanskriti was Annie. So it was very apparent that they were building a bit of a connection, affectionate connection to the voice, to the person or the device was putting out. Right.
That's a very considerate and comforting feeling.
Exactly.
For them, they're receptive to
Exactly.
sound.
We made that part of our directives for all of our voiceover artists after that.
Okay.
In whichever language, we always made it a point to have human recorded voices instead of a machine voice.
Yeah.
So of course it increases a lot of work on our end, but it's totally worth it because it's a very important aspect of learning, right?
Correct.
You want a familiar voice to teach you. And we've made it a very key aspect of what the voiceover artist needs to keep in mind when they're recording.
That personalization really goes a long way. And has there been an incident where one of the students have hacked Annie in a way that's impressed your engineering team?
Okay, so we've kept Annie purposefully very simple.
Okay.
There aren't a lot of things you can hack your way around, and that's by design. Right? But we did have this one conference where there was a teenager who had come and he played with the device. He gave us some feedback. He, played a few games and he loved it. So then he asked me, so how do you put software updates on this? I said, it connects to Wi-Fi and we can do it through that. And in about 5 minutes, he had figured out what Wi-Fi it is, how it works, how it connects and all of it. And then he's telling me, okay, so what is the password? How do I get it now? So, you just give them a little bit of a spark and they figure out the entire thing, right? Like he was using a phone like any of us. And then I was quite shocked. Like, how did you know this is the name of the, device, name of the serial number and all of these things? He's like, yeah, I did this, I did that, I did this. And I figured it out. I was like, wow,
that's very impressive. I still cannot connect to
that. At a conference, there are like hundreds of people around and it was crazy. Just using a voice-based interface, he was able to do that. And now you add the power of Braille to that, you can imagine a lot more that they can do with it.
Absolutely. So in the market, like early on in the Braille literacy space, what was, let's say, largely overlooked?
I think the aspect of interactive learning,
gamified experience,
and as well as so we looked at two aspects. So there were a bunch of different use cases where some students had access to specialized teachers, right, who could teach them Braille. But here the entire Braille learning process became very one-to-one.
Okay.
So if I have to teach you Braille, I literally have to, run your fingers over Braille and then you'll read it to me and I'll tell you if it is correct or not. So you are able to make progress when I am around and teaching you, right? So if you have a classroom of 20 people, 20 kids, I'll have to give individual attention to each child. So for the rest of the time, they're not able to make a lot of progress by themselves, especially in the early stages of learning Braille. So here, if you end up learning the wrong thing, you go in the wrong direction and you reinforce that further, makes it difficult to come back.
Correct.
So we had this thing where if there is a trained tutor available, Annie helps in a way to act as a force multiplier, right? So what was predominantly 1:1 then could now become 1:n. So the teacher can now have, let's say, 20 students, they have 20 Annies with them. They're able to progress on their own. And wherever they get stuck, wherever you need human intervention, the teacher can look at those aspects. So that way you're able to make faster progress with every single child, right? But we also had the other way around where you do not have access to a special educator or a trained tutor. You can give Annie to any adult, irrespective of whether they know Braille or not. And they will be able to administer Braille education to visually impaired child. And all of the Braille expertise aspects of it is handled by the device itself. Right?
Okay.
So they just need to ensure that the child is sitting with the device, going through the lessons. They can see on their Helios dashboard, whether they've what they've completed, what they're going to be doing next and how many times they've done it. They can see all of it in their dashboard. They can also curate saying, okay, now do these lessons, and then the device has those lessons for them. So we build all of those mechanisms. So they need not know Braille themselves, but they can still teach Braille to us.
How many languages is Annie available in?
Right now we have 12 languages.
Okay.
And we have English in 3 accents, British, American, and Indian accent. We have Arabic, and we have 10 other Indian languages. We are also building Spanish, French, and German.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've built like an engine or a templatized engine which can quickly develop new content. But what we also do is, for a lot of our songs and stories, we build very localized versions of these. So we worked with storytellers, right?
Okay.
Like, I mean, it's been difficult to find these people because it's not really a very openly available profession that you go and look for a storyteller. But yeah, we've been fortunate to find really inspiring people to write original stories for us, which go into the device.
That's lovely.
And now we're doing similar things for the languages outside of India as well.
So, Dilip, who do you really market to? The student, the parent, the teacher, or like the system?
It's a two-pronged approach, to be honest. So we have, on one side, we work with a lot of schools where we go and showcase our devices to them. And typically they ask for a demo where they have students coming in, teachers coming in. They gauge whether their teachers will be able to pick up how this device works, if they'll be able to incorporate it into their timetable, use it adequately. And once they are convinced, then if they have access to funds, it goes ahead then and there. It is a done deal, right? If they do not have access to funds, which also happens in a lot of cases, then we request for a letter of intent from them where they basically say, we've tried the device, this is what we've seen, and we have a requirement for so many devices for so many kids. So we take that to the system, like you said. So that could be government agencies at various levels. It could be a lot of NGOs working in this space. It could be other philanthropic organizations or CSR driven organizations. So we build a case for implementing these projects in these schools, resource centers, mainstream schools as well as special schools, and then we bridge them together, right? So ultimately we act as a technology provider. So we do the entire thing, starting from the awareness aspect to training programs, on-call support, in-person training, deployment. We handle the entirety of it for a period of at least 3 years.
Okay.
So we do whatever is needed to make them comfortable with the device. We, in a lot of cases, we also do follow-on training, online. There's a teacher who changes, somebody else comes in, we train them as well. But now it's come to a stage where a lot of teachers are aware of the device. Even if they're switching jobs,
They're familiar with
exactly. It becomes a skill that they're able to showcase as well, saying, I know how to handle a nanny smart class.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's typically been a process.
And what's been more challenging? Has it been selling innovation or changing the mindset?
I think in the early days, selling innovation was a bit of a challenge. We've had a mixed bag, right?
Okay.
Like when we had like these early prototypes, obviously the prototypes didn't have everything in it, right? Like we would have bits and pieces of it working, and we would then paint a picture and say, hey, this is what the final product will be doing. But as of today, we're at 30%, 40%, whatever it was. So we had like a bunch of a good percentage of teachers who were able to look at it and imagine the final product and give us feedback, saying this is how it would be useful, this is how it will not work or work, whatever the feedback was. But there are also a bunch of teachers who were a little dismissive initially to begin with, right? Like they would base their feedback on where the prototype was at that stage. And they would say, no, this is very rough, or the volume is low, this will not work, I don't see my children using it, or this wire is not long enough. So, I mean, this was also important feedback for sure. But it took us a lot of time to get to a stage where we could sort of convince them that this could be like a daily use thing in their schools and closely incorporated in their way of teaching. So it took us 2 years to go from prototype to product, and it went through 6 major iterations in that time. A lot of feedback, a lot of field trials we did. We also had the opportunity to do some field trials in the UK as well.
Mm.
So very different kind of setting in the UK compared to here, but the core issues still remain the same. So a lot of the product features matched there as well, right? And feedback was very relevant. So we were able to incorporate each of those in every subsequent
The
iteration.
global insight really
Exactly.
makes sense. And but did the Shark Tank visibility help in the adoption, or did it like create new expectations for you?
A bit on both again.
Okay.
So Shark Tank was in 2022,
Mm.
right? This was already our 6th year
Mm.
by then. So our product was in the market for about 3 or 4 years by the time we went to Shark Tank. So it was actually good timing for us because we had just started getting the product out there and we were present in a few schools across the country. We were just starting to work with an organization in the US as well. So it really helped build a lot of credibility for us.
Okay.
And I think organic growth started increasing significantly post that period, right?
Mhm.
So it got to a stage where a lot of the schools were aware of us, what we were doing. And it's a very close-knit community. They were also able to, even before reaching out to us, call the other schools which had the devices and get their feedback on it, right?
Mm.
And we also started seeing a lot of videos of Annie in action being shared on their WhatsApp groups. And we would get to know, somebody would say, hey, I saw this in a WhatsApp group. And I would say, oh, which WhatsApp group? They're like, no, I have a teachers group and it was shared there. So it started doing the rounds, that in these networks and circles. So I think that being on national TV really helped in that way.
Okay.
They were able to say, oh, look, this thing that came on TV, I've used it before. I already use it with my children. And then somebody else would want it. So we got a lot of requests.
The credibility must be massive.
Absolutely.
By that
It
point.
opened a lot of doors for us as well because in a lot of cases, it does become difficult to get an audience, right? When you're
Correct.
pitching something very new,
Mm.
something that is still establishing itself. So this credibility, it really helped open a lot of doors for us as well. So.
If you could describe
Mhm.
Annie without using the word Braille or assistive tech,
Mhm.
how would it be?
I would say a teacher.
A teacher.
Teacher, yeah.
That in a
Very
sense.
simple, yeah.
And so you're telling me you tracked your data, the teachers and the parents tracked the data on an application called Helios.
Yeah.
So what is the insight that Helios gave you that blew your mind?
See, we obviously have data on how quickly they're learning, compared to what they would have without Annie, right?
Mm.
So we've done some of those studies which have told us they're learning how to type in Braille 9 times faster, for example, than they would have without the entire Annie plus Helios suite. Apart from these data points, I think some of the things that we spend a lot of time is looking at what are the aspects of the device that children keep coming back to, that they want to use over and over again. And we've corroborated this with anecdotal evidence from teachers as well. So in a lot of places, children are hooked to the games, right? Because, who wouldn't be? That's a very usual mentality of children.
Correct.
So we've designed the games in such a way that if you really want to get a higher score, the only way to do that is to be able to read faster, read more accurately, and same thing for typing as well. So if you are trying to beat your score, you are in essence becoming better at Braille, right? So it's sort of like a cheat code way into improving Braille proficiency. And we've noticed that teachers have started using this as a reward mechanism. So they say, hey, if you finish these lessons in the last 10 minutes, I'll let you play games. Right. So it's become like that. And
Part of the system.
Exactly. So we've enabled them to curate lesson plans as they want to for every child. So they're able to select saying, okay, today I'll do these lessons for this child. And then once those lessons are completed, then they can do whatever else they want, right? So that's how the device also performs. So once you have lessons curated by a teacher, your device gives you only those lessons. So the entire menu is not unlocked to you. So once you finish these lessons for the day, then the entire menu comes back, right? So then they can select their game and play. So they use it as a reward mechanism. We've seen this not just in India, but other parts of the world as well. So that is something that Helios also showed us in terms of the data, right? Like what lessons are being played more often and we were able to corroborate that with real life data.
Okay, so has the Helios data ever proven your assumptions wrong though?
Some have, some aspects have. Like for example, we initially thought when we built a login mechanism for use in India, because we have a smart class, right? So we have devices that can be used by multiple children. It's like a computer lab. So in order to stay with our concept of having a linear learning path for every child so that they can learn at their own pace, we had to build in like a login mechanism.
Okay.
So they could resume from where they left off, as well as giving Helios the ability to track their progress, right? So here, initially our thought process was that we will need like a password mechanism as well to sort of, block misuse, or, whatever you call it. So we built in like a login plus login username plus password mechanism. So over time, we gave the ability to teachers to change the password as they want to, but we noticed they weren't really changing their password. So then we went back and asked them, hey, why do you have the same password, the default password, still? And they said, no, it's more of a hindrance for us to type password. We don't really want to type the password. Just give us a username. We'll identify the child will log in, and then we'll continue. We don't really need password. So our assumption was that, fearing a little bit of misuse of, login, we gave a password feature and it wasn't really needed.
Okay.
So in some cases, we've given a mechanism to do away with it now, right? Similarly, we also had, in the US, for example, we had requests where they said they wanted to have a mode where the large braille cells are not being used, right? So basically you disable the large braille cells.
Okay.
So the idea behind the large braille cells is that is the first the first module that you will play with on the Annie. So you get accustomed to how a braille cell functions, what the different dots are. And on the Annie, you can press down the dots as well, individual dots, and that also acts as an input. Right.
Okay.
So there are a lot of games built around that interaction itself. But we had this feedback which said there are some children who start off their journey with the device at a slightly later period where they've learned a little bit of Braille already. So they don't need the very basic parts.
Yeah.
And we had Helios data to confirm that as well, where because they have the curation feature, they were curating the later on lessons and not what we call the pre-Braille lessons. So it was a smaller percentage, but it was still, it gave us backing to some of these requests that which otherwise we would have thought were one-off requests. We had backing from Helios data that there was a significant percentage of people who did not use the pre-Braille lessons, meaning they did not want to do the initial modules. So then we gave an option to have lessons where you could disable the large cell module and just use the standard Braille cell.
Is it like a level-based learning initiative?
Yeah, it's like a linear learning, I would say, where we have you have the first lesson to begin with, you finish that, and then the next lesson comes on. And in between, you have these assessment tests, which then unlock a larger chunk of the lessons depending on how you do in these assessment tests.
Okay.
So some of these early modules, which use a large Braille cell typically, are very basic, right? When you just start learning Braille. So if somebody has some idea of Braille, they wouldn't want to go through all of those lessons initially. So they wanted a way to, disable those and just go to the next set of lessons. And this is what, we gave a feature to do later on. So yeah.
Those kind of market based. So how many, is this the reason you had these many iterations?
So these were after it went into production. So we always keep listening to what, our users say. So on Helios as well, there's a mechanism where from the application itself, they can give us a quick feedback. And that was we made slightly easy. They just have like 5 emojis to choose from. They can click on those emojis and the feedback comes to us. Or they can type out a message as well. So we're seeing a lot of people use these to give us feedback, right? So yeah, we keep doing a lot of software updates, and the device can be updated over the air via Wi-Fi or wired internet or through USB updates as well. So as and when we get these feedback, we try and validate it with data from Helios to see if it corroborates with what the user is saying, how many people actually face this kind of an issue or have this requirement. And we try and talk to some people who we've been in touch with for quite some time, get their thoughts on it. and then we put that into our software updates. So this is an ongoing process. We keep doing that.
We spoke about the teachers having cynical feedbacks to the product itself.
Yeah.
But have you had any pushback from the teachers for, like, what was their reaction, feedback towards data-driven information rather than intuitive-based learning?
I mean, it's also a mixed bag. And I think it continues to be a mixed bag as well. There are still a good percentage of teachers who probably would not look at data to make decisions. They'll rely on their experience, having taught Braille for a very long time themselves. But we also have a bunch of teachers who really rely on the data on a daily basis, right? And we've had cases where we've had some trouble with the local setup, and so the way Helios works is it is available locally as well.
Okay.
So we've reduced the dependency on internet for it to work, to make it
more accessible.
Exactly, in low and no network areas, right? So in some cases where we've had some downtime, we've gotten calls after calls saying, no, I need this to run my class. Why is this not working? Can you get it back up? But we also had requests saying, hey, I don't want to use the login mechanism. Just give me a way where I turn on the device and immediately I have the lessons. So these are the people who typically don't rely on data to make decisions. So we've had a mixed bag, and it continues to be a mixed bag. And initially we were a little pushy on things having to go through Helios. We came up with a lot of different ways to incentivize them to use Helios, log in every single time. But I wouldn't say we were very successful in getting everybody to do that. So a good percentage, we were able to encourage them to use Helios, but then there were others who had some infrastructural challenges. They're like, oh, I'll need to use my personal phone to access Helios. I don't want to always do it. In a lot of cases, schools have a laptop or a desktop in the lab, so they can use that. But in cases where they do not, it became a bit of an infrastructure challenge. So then we did end up having like a mechanism where it would do a similar level without logging in, but they would miss out on the report generation and the data. I mean, if that is what they wanted for integration, we had to provide that. But I mean, going by what I've seen from the data we've collected, as well as how it was intended to be used, I would say using it with Helios is the best way to do it. And we have a lot of schools and success stories where they've gotten a lot of value from doing it this way.
That's great. And when you were building your smart classrooms, was there a moment where you felt like, yes, this is why we're continuing to do this?
Yeah, definitely. Because so we had this one school in Bangalore itself where so this school is based opposite the school that I studied in. So I spent 10 years in a school opposite to this one. And I've spent a lot of my time in school volunteering in events, that this blind school used to have, be it their sports day or their cultural events and things like that. I mean, never thought, life would come full circle and I would go back there one day, but it was a project that I've been quite involved in myself personally. So here they had this thing where for a period of time initially, they did their classes traditionally as they were doing previously. And side by side, they also did classes on the Annie.
Okay.
For a good year, they did this, right? And they maintained a log of what they were learning in their traditional classes and what they were now doing with the Annie. And by the end of the year, we could see like a major difference between what they achieved in the traditional classrooms versus what they were able to do with the Annie. And we only had Helios data till that point, right? Apart from our initial market research and field trial days, in usage we hadn't seen the other side of it, side by side. So this is the first time we got to see that data, and that was very interesting to see, and it was very motivating for us as well, right? Like because we could use this data to then showcase to other schools as to why they should integrate Annie into their timetable. And that has become like a constant part of our whatever talking points when we go and talk to these schools and say, look, we have this data that this is how much difference it is able to bring in if you use it in so and so ways. Yeah, that was quite eye opening for us.
So how do you imagine Annie to be in 5 to 10 years with regards to innovation?
You see, I mean, like I said, Annie is already evolving frequently with our software updates, right?
Okay.
We're also gathering a lot of data to see if there's a new generation of Annie that we can work on and release as a product upgrade in itself. But I think our focus is more on the entire ecosystem. So we have Annie as a device which is focusing on foundational literacy and numeracy, and that's been mostly our phase one of the entire journey. And now we are getting into phase two. So we have a new product that's launching in the next couple of months, where while Annie was a product which was teaching you how to learn to read, this new product will teach you how to read to learn, right? So utilizing your Braille skills and your Braille expertise along with audio. So the best of both worlds, audio and Braille together, in a new kind of Braille display where you can consume any other content out there. So what we are trying to do in terms of innovation is look at all the learnings we've had from Annie, all the things that people really like about the Annie, all the things that are not as widely used as we expected it to be used. Looking at all of those aspects and putting those learnings into this new device, which is meant for higher classes, going into higher education as well as into their workplace as a productivity tool, right? So put together, this will be one ecosystem.
Okay.
Annie for foundational learning and numeracy, and then the new product for continuing from there on, right?
Okay.
So this will help with a lot of test prep material as well. Like for example, you want to take up like a CLAT exam, you want to become a lawyer. So we're building audio and Braille interactive learning material, maintaining the same level of interaction that Annie has, right, into other content as well. Be it your high school content, your 12th exam, going into higher studies, in the workplace, or giving your banking exam.
You are building the infrastructure.
Exactly. So we're also creating like a platform where anybody can create this content seamlessly without having to know Braille themselves. So again, maintaining the same concepts of Annie, right, which have worked well for us, but expanding the scope of that to a larger learning environment. So this is what we've been working on for the last, I would say, 10 to 12 months. And there'll be staged releases over the next year. And we will see a lot more utility. At least that's our effort, to bring a lot more utility to Braille itself. Sort of relook how Braille is used and what value we can get out of it, and maximize that in a way. Right?
I'm very invested now in the development of this application because it sounds very interesting. The fact that like I mentioned off camera to you, I do not know Braille, but I would like to contribute towards education. I mean, it doesn't matter if it is for a visually impaired child or not. They are also children and they need to be where we all stand. And I feel like as people of a country, we all need to contribute in one way or the other to help others.
Absolutely.
But how would you define success if we take revenue out of the equation?
I mean, multiple ways of looking at it. One, I think, see, education is a long game, right? Very difficult to immediately measure success in education.
Correct.
But there are still a lot of markers that are measurable and quantifiable. So with Annie, we're looking at basically Braille proficiency, right? So we're looking at how quickly they can gain a certain level of proficiency of Braille. And that is, while that is quantifiable, what comes next is not quantifiable to a great extent, which is what is the effect of that on their overall education, right? See, I mean, anecdotally, we could tell previously that if we had children getting into class 5, class 6, not being fully proficient in Braille, and then they would have access to Braille textbooks, and then they're reading, let's say, learning science and learning about photosynthesis in middle school. when you're reading photosynthesis, you should not be thinking whether that is an H or a T or an I. You should not be thinking about the letters there, right? You should be thinking about what the concept of photosynthesis is. So that is what the sighted peers are doing.
Correct.
So that was our initial intent, saying, hey, we want to bridge that gap, right? So when they read a textbook or any kind of Braille resource material, they should be able to think about the concept rather than struggle with the reading aspect of it. So this is not very measurable in a very macro lens, if you see.
Sure.
But with the new device, like I just mentioned, there are certain aspects again which are measurable and some aspects which are little intangible. So measurable would be, for example, if you look at our efforts towards building class 10 or high school test prep material or digitized audio tactile textbooks and reference materials loaded onto these devices, we could look at 10 standard board exam pass percentages. And you could have a before and after, and you could compare and say, with the intervention, we have an X percentage better pass percentage, But if you're looking at, for example, the understanding of concepts because of this intervention, very difficult to quantify that.
Correct.
Right? Like,
it's subjective to the child's IQ.
Exactly. And what they do with that is also something difficult to quantify. But one could argue that that is an impact directly or indirectly of this intervention in education. I think the same holds for any intervention in education. You never know.
Yeah, it's
What-
always going to be an open debate that
Exactly.
stays. I mean, it also differs product to product, usages, circumstances,
Absolutely.
and all of
Yeah.
that. So you have this understanding after almost 10 years of building this product. And you told me that you started this journey with your co-founders from university. We've all been at that very, at the start of our careers with big dreams and wanting to do the next best thing, the next easiest way to reach fame and success. There must have been one moment in all your lives. I'm requesting you to speak on behalf of your team. In all your lives that you thought, you know what, we are on the path to creating something that is going to make a change and we are going to seek the success that we deserve. What was that incident? Was there an incident?
I mean, see, like in the external world or in all the stories we put out, I don't know if it is human tendency or what, we generally tend to talk about all the positive points, the points of success, the things that have gone well for us. But
tell me the jugaad behind your product.
There are a lot of negative points as well, right? Like a lot of, it's a series of ups and downs. So usually these are things we usually don't talk about publicly, right? But they've been very instrumental in shaping who we are and how the company has come to where it is today. I think some of our points were where, like, for example, we had this large partnership with an organization in the US.
Okay.
That's something that we worked on for a good 2 years or so to cement. It was a lot of effort to get to that point, and this was during the heart of the pandemic, right? And it was difficult to travel and meet in person and have these meetings, but we still managed to pull it off. And I think that was a very emotional moment for us. Like, I remember my co-founder Saif was, his family stays in Mumbai. And the day we had a contract signed with this American agency, he printed a copy of that and went home to meet his parents. And it was sort of like we felt like we're finally hitting that growth point, where we're going to be seeing a different velocity to the entire organization. So that's a memory we all remember fondly. And it was we had like a large celebration with everybody in the team, and everybody was talking about why they got into this, why they like doing this, not just the four of us, but the rest of the organization as well. So we had a similar effect post the Shark Tank episode as well, because we had not really expected that it'll blow up the way it did. And because of the season 1 as well, we didn't really know what to expect, right? But after that, it was really good to see a lot of people congratulating us on what we were doing and what was going on. Initially, I think we took it a little bit of a nonchalant way because it didn't hit us that hard. But over a period of time, we thought of it sort of sunk in, right? And we had like a very emotional reaction to it, internally. So these are some moments, I think, that stand out from a public lens perspective that I can talk about. But internally, there have been a lot more where, but I think the theme is wherever the struggle has been significant and we have come out of it, those moments have been the most significant for us.
Very rewarding.
Yeah, even more than the top revenue numbers or our PR or marketing or any of those things. Wherever we've had insane struggle and we've had our backs against the wall and we've come out of those situations, those have been the most significant moments.
It's very warm to hear that. And to see the journey of a group of college students who've come all this way doing something that's changing the world every day. It's really, really heartwarming. And I'm sure that as young students, tell me more about your Duchess story. I'm very curious about that. How did that come about?
Okay, so this was in 2016. We were still in college. This was our final semester. So we were working on this almost full time. I mean, whatever we could, while also being part of the university program. And we had applied to a competition by Department of International Trade, UK government.
Okay.
And at the end of that competition, we had, the organizers called us back and said, hey, we have this event in Mumbai in about a month's time and we have a VVIP coming in. Would you like to showcase your product there? And they didn't tell us who the VVIP was going to be. We said, yeah, we would love to showcase the product there. I mean, at that time, we were jumping at any opportunity we got, right?
Students.
Exactly.
Rightfully so.
So they said, okay, great. Why don't you bring your unit and show us what exactly you'll be going to demo on that day and we can take it from there. So my co-founder Sanskriti goes there and she gives a demo. So we had a prototype that we were insanely proud of, right? Because for the first time, we had gotten all of the different modules to work at that stage. This was still, compared to the final version of Annie that we put out in the market, quite rudimentary, but we were very proud of where it had reached at that stage itself. And she gave a demo, and then at the end of the demo, they say, okay, this is all fine, demo is great, but obviously this is not what you're going to be showcasing on the day of the demo because this is a rough prototype, right? And then she says, yeah, this is a prototype. We obviously have a finished product. And we had 3 weeks to go to the event at that time. So she comes back and says, guys, we have 3 weeks and we have to build, a better looking prototype than this. So we were like, okay, only 3 weeks to go. So we went around Goa and we found this industrial designer who was, who helped us a lot actually. So her team did the industrial design on the final Annie product as well later on. So she heard the entire story and she said, okay, I'll help you out. I know we have only 3 weeks, but let's figure out something. So with her team, we sat down and they helped us a little bit with the aesthetics and the ergonomics of the device. And we sat in tandem with them. We also had access to a few of the university resources at that point, right? We were still in college. So that helped as well. And somehow working overnight for 3 weeks, I think there was a period where we hadn't slept for some 50-60 hours. We were continuously going at it, and we got the devices out, the brand new design, of good looking prototypes out. So we go to the event, and the event went very well. So we taught how to type George, their son's name. The VVIP turned out to be the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. And we did not know this till like about a couple of days before the event. So then the
pressure must have shot up.
So we very quickly designed this game to teach them how to type George. And then these people were like, okay, teaching George is fine, but there are going to be a lot of media people. What are they going to be taking photos of? If everything is happening on the device with no screen, how will they know what is going on? So they gave us a TV, right? And we built like a very simple application where the TV was showing what was going on the device. So if they're typing G, it is showing that they're typing G. If they get it right, it puts a tick mark. If they get it wrong, puts an X mark. A little bit of animations, a little bit of sound. We put all of those in. And so we shipped this. It worked flawlessly during the demo. We were super happy about that. And at the end of it, that whatever we put on the TV, became a very core concept for us, because we realized today it was the media people who wanted to know what is going on the device. Tomorrow it could be anybody else as well, right? It could be your teacher, it could be your parent who wants to know what is going on the device. And we had to build something that they could keep pace with, right? So that's why we built the Helios platform as well. I mean, the idea originated from there. Then we obviously had a lot of validation from teachers also saying, yeah, this would be a great tool for me if I had something to look at, for to find out what is going on. So at this event, there were a lot of things that happened for us where we met the Duke and Duchess. Mr. Anand Mahindra was also there.
Okay.
So he was with his F1 simulator, right? He was one of the guests at that event. And there was a small pitch event at the end of it. And Sanskriti pitched and he said, okay, if you're raising your round, I'm interested. And we also had a bunch of other people jump in and say, hey, I'm also interested. Let's talk. So this was a couple of months before we even graduated. We had people who were saying they're interested in investing in a product for which there was no company also at that point. We just had a name we were working with, right? And that was super motivating for us, because I think it really helped in a lot of our decision making as well, to jump straight into it after we graduated.
Okay.
So a few months later we graduated, opened a private limited company, and then got in touch with all of these people. There was still a lot for us to learn about how to structure a company, as someone put it, how to get the hygiene aspects right, like to be investment ready.
Correct.
And we did all that, and we have all of them as our investors today. So it started off as something else altogether and ended up being a super key moment of our journey.
A pivotal one that changed the direction. Absolutely. It's all being in the right place at the right time also.
Yeah, we've been fortunate that.
So if what would you say to if a visually impaired child is listening to us 5 years from now? What would you want them to know?
I think it's something that they should keep hearing, and I'm sure they do already from their parents and teachers, that there should be no limit to their ambition, right? As cliche as it sounds, I think it is all the more relevant here, because in a lot of places, when you start noticing that the infrastructure doesn't exist or it is not built for you, and you need to fight harder than your sighted peers to get the same things, it may look and seem like a very daunting task, like a very uphill battle. But there are a lot of system builders who are putting a lot of effort to level some of this playing field, right? And with respect to providing access to quality and standardized education, our efforts are on, right? And they will continue to be.
Absolutely.
We've looked at foundational literacy and numeracy, but we're not stopping there. Our goal is to be a part of every visually impaired child's education in some way or form, wherever we can contribute and have a lasting impact, positive impact, be it just hardware, be it in software, be it in content, wherever we are able to add value, we want to, either through the Annie ecosystem or even perhaps utilizing our hardware expertise and experience to provide that to other service providers, other system builders, to ultimately leave a positive impact on their education, right? So just don't hold back on the ambition. So we have our brand ambassador Prathamesh, everybody must have seen on Shark Tank. He aspires to be an IAS officer, and if that is something that he continues to want to be, at this stage, I'm sure that everybody will have changing ambitions, but
Absolutely.
that is something he wants to continue to stick with. I have zero doubt that he will make it, because he's someone who is very confident, right? And that kind of confidence,
The drive.
absolutely, I would love for every child to have, and I will be super happy, fortunate and grateful if we've played a small role in a child having that level of confidence.
What really stays with me in this conversation is not just the technology. It's the reminder that, like, building technology need not be done faster, but it just needs to be done fairer. Because I also infer that when learning is being designed for independence, the dignity comes along with it.
Absolutely.
Which is that the virtue of that sentiment itself will contribute towards the growth.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for coming today and having this lovely, insightful conversation with me, Dilip. I really, truly appreciate that and all of the effort that your team is making for a better country and a better world for all the children across.
Thank you.
So it was nice meeting you.
Thank you so much. The pleasure's all mine.
Yeah.
Thank you.